Hey guys, I'm back again. So last week we left off where Odysseus had finally been able to win that war. The Greeks had finally been able to win the war, and he was finally able to start sailing back to Ithaca. So he and some of his soldiers get on a ship, and they're sailing towards Ithaca, and they can't wait to get there. And on their way, they have to stop at different places to get some food and some water. And one of the places they stop at is the story I'm going to tell you today. Um, so they stop off at this island. They get in a little rowboat. Well, it's a big rowboat, actually. They get into a little ship and they row to the shore and they leave the ship there. And Odysseus has some really nice wine that he's brought back from the ship, and he's going to bring that to whoever they get the food from. He's going to trade the beautiful wine, really tasty wine, for whatever food he gets from them. So they land on shore and they start searching and searching, and they're having a hard time finding anything, and finally they find this big cave and they go inside, and there's some really nice cheese in there and then some milk in there, and it's just full of food. And they think to themselves, well, we've hit the jackpot here. We're going to get food. We just need to meet the person who owns this stuff, and we'll give him some wine, and we'll get our food and our water and our milk and bring it back to the ship, and we'll head off back to Ithaca. So they wait, and finally, the person who owns the cave shows up. And the first thing they see are some sheep. And the sheep are coming into the cave. And they're like, oh, nice sheep. Maybe we can bring some of those back and have some sheep for dinner. And the next thing that comes in is a really surprising thing. This is a giant cyclops. Now, if you don't already know, a cyclops is a creature with one eye right in the middle of their head. And they're giants. And this particular cyclops was named Polyphemus, and he is the son of Poseidon. And Poseidon was the god of the ocean, and Polyphemus, who was really, really not nice, showed up, and Odysseus offered the wine, and he said, well, can you have this wine and we'll take the food? And Polyphemus said, no. And he actually grabbed two of Odysseus's men and he ate them. Yuck, I know. So he ate two of their men, and needless to say, Odysseus and his men were really, really scared. They ran off, they were hiding, and Polyphemus told them, those two guys tasted so yummy, I think I'm going to have some more in the morning. And they're like, we got to get this figured out. We got to get out of here. Odysseus thought and thought, and he couldn't think of anything that night. And so they wake up the next morning, and Polyphemus is hungry for breakfast, and he eats two more of Odysseus's men. I'm sorry, it's yucky. So he eats two more of his men, and they're even more desperate to get out now because they've already lost four men, and they're only, I think there were just 12 of them to begin with. So now they're down four men, and they don't want to lose any more men because they really loved them. And so Odysseus and his men are sitting there thinking, and Polyphemus, after a lovely breakfast, takes his sheep and he sends them out of the cave, and he leaves and he rolls a big stone in front of the cave. So even though Odysseus and his men are in there alone, they can't get out because the big stone is way too big for them to move. So while they're in there, Odysseus is trying to think of a way to get them out of this problem, this dangerous place they're at. And he's thinking and thinking, and he finally thinks, well, I'm going to use that wine. I'm going to use the wine and see if I can figure out a way to get Polyphemus drunk and have him fall asleep, and then we can try to do something. So Polyphemus comes back, and he gets the sheep in there, and he rolls the stone back across, and he's hungry for dinner. So I'm not going to go into detail, but Odysseus loses two more men, and so he's thought about what he needs to do. So even though he's lost two more men and he's really upset, he knows he's got to think straight and he's got to get this done. So he uses the wine. He pours it into a nice big bowl for Polyphemus, and Polyphemus drinks the wine and he says, this is wonderful wine. Who's serving me the wine? And Odysseus says, my name is Nobody. And so if Polyphemus thinks his name is Nobody, and he keeps drinking the wine, and Odysseus keeps giving him more wine, and finally Polyphemus falls asleep. He's drunk so much wine, he's just fallen asleep. And at this point, Odysseus knows that they're able to do something. Now, the rock is still across the cave, but they can figure out a way to maybe deal with Polyphemus, to maim him, to take away his sight, actually. So Odysseus asks his men to find a big log, which they do, and he asks them to sharpen the end of it, which they do. And it's a really big log, and it takes more than one man to lift this. So Odysseus says to them, we need to stab Polyphemus in the eye with this, and we need to blind him. Because once he's blind, we can have the upper hand. We can do something to get out of here. So they take the big pole and they stab it in his eye and they blind him, and he wakes up and he gets the stone out of the way and he goes outside and he's like, help me, help me. And his friends, which aren't right next door, so they don't know anybody's inside his cave, are up in the hills, and they hear him yelling and they say, what's wrong? And he says, nobody stabbed me in the eye. And they're like, well, okay, it's good to know that, but why are you yelling? And he says, nobody's in my cave trying to take my food. And they're like, okay, why are you telling us if nobody's in there doing anything? And they're like, well, he's gone crazy. So they stop listening to him. And so Polyphemus doesn't get any help. But he is able to yank that log out of his eye. He feels his way back into the cave. He rolls the stone back across it. And he, at this point, he can't see. So, but he's got the stone across the opening. So Odysseus has some way to sort of get around him, because at least he can't see anymore. So Odysseus tells his men, well, every morning Polyphemus lets the sheep out, and then he follows them and they graze. So he said, what we need to do is we need to tie ourselves underneath sheep. So there's 6 of them left, and they find 6 sheep that are big enough for men to be tied underneath. And they tie themselves under the sheep. And what happens is Polyphemus opens the stone, because he needs his sheep to go out and eat, and he makes sure no men are coming out. So as they exit, he's feeling all the sheep to make sure there's no men trying to get past him. And because Odysseus and his men are tied to the bottom of the sheep, he can't tell there's men leaving. So they get out, they get untied from the sheep, they run back to their boat, and they're making noise getting back there. So Polyphemus can hear them, and he knows they're escaping, and he's following the noise, and he can hear them getting in a boat, and he can hear them splashing, and he can hear them rowing, and he can hear where they are right now. So he goes over to the cliffside. Actually, let me show you something. I forgot to show you. So this is the cave. This is Odysseus. They're actually sitting on big pieces of cheese, and he's telling them what they need to do. These are Polyphemus's sheep, and these are his feet when he fell asleep. So this is what I forgot to show you. I apologize. Okay, so they are there, and they escape, and Polyphemus hears them, and he gets to the edge of the cliff, and he's throwing big boulders at them because he can hear them, and he's very angry because somebody blinded him. And at this point, well, Odysseus makes a really bad decision. He is so proud of himself for getting out of that situation and saving what few men he had left, that he yells to Polyphemus and he says, my name is Odysseus, and I am the one who's defeated you. And Polyphemus says, okay, your name is Odysseus, and I know who defeated me and who maimed me, who took away my sight. So we know that Polyphemus' father is Poseidon, and that Poseidon is the god of the ocean. So Odysseus' decision to brag about the fact that he was the one that blinded, what is his name again? I can't remember his name. Anyway, Polyphemus, that was a bad idea, because now Poseidon knows who's hurt his son, and Odysseus wants to sail home, and Odysseus is on the ocean. So it was a very bad decision. And so what happens is he continues to sail home, and we'll see next week if he ever gets home. I hope he does, because he really loves his family. But it's going to be hard because he made that bad decision to brag about the fact that he was able to beat Polyphemus. So next week, like I said, we'll be learning a little more about Odysseus, not Jason. We're done with Jason. So I did send some coloring pages, and I sent a craft. I think you'll like the craft. Now, the craft is going to involve a lot of folding, and I think your parents should help you. But once it's done, it'll be really cool. So I think that's it for this week, and I'll see you again next week. I can't wait to tell you the story. Bye.